All right, so are you ready to dive deep into some Spanish grammar with me today?
Let's do it.
Today, we're going to be looking at Spanish possessive adjectives.
Ooh, possessive adjectives.
We're going to be using this really great YouTube video by Jaime Lara called possessivospractica.txt.
Oh, I love Jaime Lara.
Me too. He's a great teacher.
He's really engaging.
Yeah, and he's got such a clear teaching style.
Yeah, and I really appreciate his use of real-life examples, too.
Oh, for sure. It really helps to make the concepts stick.
Absolutely.
And I think this deep dive is perfect for anyone who's maybe a little curious about Spanish grammar or wants to brush up on their language skills.
Or just wants to see how, different languages express ownership in different ways.
Totally.
Because it can be really different from what we're used to in English.
Right. And you know what else I love about Jaime's video is that he uses this pause and practice format.
Oh, yeah, that's really cool.
Where he encourages you to actually try out the examples as you go.
Yeah, it's like having a personal tutor.
It is. You should totally grab a pen and paper if you're feeling ambitious.
I might just do that.
So to kick things off, Jaime starts by reminding us that possessive adjectives are all about ownership.
Right, like who owns what.
Exactly. They tell us who or what something belongs to.
It seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah. On the surface, it does, right?
Yeah.
But here's where things get interesting.
Here's where the fun begins.
Exactly. While the basic concept of ownership is the same in English and Spanish, the way that Spanish expresses possession can be pretty different.
Oh, absolutely.
You really have to pay close attention to things like gender and number agreement.
Which can be a bit of a headache for English speakers sometimes.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And that's where some of the quirks that we're going to talk about today start to pop up. So Jaime dives into some examples that highlight the key differences between English and Spanish. And one of the first things that really threw me for a loop was how Spanish uses definite articles like el, la, los, and las instead of possessive adjectives for body parts and clothing.
Oh, yeah. That one gets me every time.
Right.
It just feels wrong at first.
It does. It feels so counterintuitive.
Yeah, it does.
So, for instance, in English, you'd say, I'm washing my hair, right?
Right.
But in Spanish, it's me estoy lavando el pelo. Literally, I'm washing the hair.
The hair.
It's so weird. It's wait, I can't just say my hair.
I know. It's whose hair could it possibly be?
Exactly. It's attached to my head.
Right.
But there's actually a really cool reason behind this.
Oh, there is? Tell me.
So, using the definite article in this way actually emphasizes the inherent connection between a person and their body.
Oh, okay.
It's like saying, it's obvious which hair we're talking about here, the one attached to me.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's not just a random grammar rule. Right.
It's actually reflecting a different perspective on the relationship between a person and their body.
Wow, I never thought of it that way.
It's so cool, right?
It is.
It's these kinds of insights that make learning a new language so fascinating.
Absolutely.
You start to see the world through a different lens.
It's like a whole new perspective.
It really is.
I love it.
All right, so we've tackled body parts. What other surprises does Spanish have in store for us when it comes to possessives?
Buckle up, because we're just getting started.
Oh, I'm ready.
Okay, so let's dive into some of Jaime's exercises and see what kind of aha moments we can uncover.
Yes, let's do it.
One of the exercises that I think really illustrates this whole formality thing is where Jaime asks viewers to fill in the blank with the correct possessive adjective.
Okay.
And the sentence is, ¿Cuál es animal favorito, José? Which means, what is your favorite animal, José?
Right.
And he makes a big point about how important it is to pay attention to who you're talking to. In this case, José.
So how does that affect which possessive adjective we use?
Well, because we're addressing José directly and in an informal way,
okay,
the correct possessive adjective would be tu.
Right.
Which means your in the informal singular form.
You got it.
If we were talking to someone older, someone we respect, or someone we don't know very well, we'd use su instead.
Exactly.
So the complete sentence would be, ¿Cuál es tu animal favorito, José?
Perfect.
It seems like those little possessive adjectives pack a lot of meaning.
Oh, they do. They really do.
Amazing.
And here's where it gets even trickier.
Uh-oh.
Spanish possessives also change depending on the number and gender of the noun they modify.
Oh, well.
So it's like a puzzle where all the pieces have to fit together perfectly.
Okay, so if we were asking about José's favorite animals, plural, would that change the possessive adjective?
It absolutely would. So we were talking about multiple animals.
Yeah.
The possessive adjective would change to tus.
So it's tus instead of tu.
Exactly, a subtle shift.
Right.
But it makes all the difference in Spanish grammar.
Wow, so even a small change in the noun can completely change the possessive adjective?
It can.
I'm starting to see why people say Spanish grammar can be tricky.
It definitely has its challenges.
For sure.
But I think that's part of what makes it so rewarding to learn.
Yeah.
You know, you're constantly discovering these little intricacies that make the language so rich and expressive.
It really is. It's fascinating.
It is.
Okay, I'm ready for another challenge.
All right, bring it on.
What's another example from Jaime's video that might trip up English speakers?
Okay, this one really got me thinking.
Okay.
Jaime gave the sentence, Manuel y hermana Carmen son muy simpáticos.
Okay.
Meaning, Manuel and his sister Carmen are very nice.
Okay.
Now, think about which possessive you would use in English.
In English, we'd probably say Manuel and his sister Carmen are very nice.
Yeah.
So I'm going to guess the Spanish sentence would be Manuel y su hermana Carmen son muy simpáticos.
You got the possessive right. But here's the tricky part.
Oh, no.
Even though we're talking about Manuel's sister,
Uh-huh.
the possessive adjective needs to agree with Manuel himself,
Oh.
who is the possessor.
Right.
He's a third-person singular masculine subject.
Mm-hmm.
So we use su, which means his or her, in the third-person singular form.
So it's Manuel y su hermana Carmen son muy simpáticos, even though it feels like it should be her sister.
Right. It's a little counterintuitive.
Yeah, it's like the possessive is more about the grammatical structure than the actual meaning of the sentence.
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
You're starting to think like a Spanish speaker,
Cool.
focusing on the grammatical relationships between the words.
Okay. I'm starting to get the hang of this.
Awesome.
But I have a feeling Jaime has more tricks up his sleeve.
He always does.
Oh, boy.
There's one more exercise I want to talk about.
Okay.
It's the one where Jaime asks viewers to choose between mío and me. To complete the sentence, este es hermano Juan, meaning this is my brother Juan.
Woo, okay.
So which one do you think it is?
Well, they both seem like they could mean my.
Right, they both relate to possession in some way.
So what's the difference?
This is a great example of how the context of the sentence changes the meaning of a possessive word.
Okay.
Because if we say, este es hermano, Juan es mío, it makes it sound like Juan is an object that belongs to the speaker.
Like you're claiming ownership of him.
Exactly.
Right.
So the correct answer is me.
Okay.
We're simply stating that Juan is the speaker's brother,
Right.
not claiming ownership of him.
Gotcha.
The complete sentence is, este es mi hermano Juan.
So me is used when we're just stating a relationship, and
Right.
mío is more about emphasizing possession.
Exactly.
Okay, I see.
This highlights a really important distinction between possessive adjectives and possessive pronouns in Spanish.
Me.
Tu, su, and so on are possessive adjectives.
Right.
They go before a noun to show ownership.
Okay.
But mío, tuyo, and suyo are possessive pronouns.
Okay.
They stand alone and often come after the noun to emphasize who something belongs to.
Oh, okay. So it's like Spanish has two different ways to express ownership,
Yeah,
each with its own special job to do.
exactly.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, and mastering both possessive adjectives and possessive pronouns
Right.
is a big step towards speaking and understanding Spanish fluently.
I can see why Jaime focuses so much on this concept. It seems like a real cornerstone of Spanish grammar.
It really is, and it's one of those things that can really trip up English speakers
Yeah.
if they're not aware of the subtle differences.
Yeah, it's amazing how much we've learned just from going through a few of Jaime's exercises.
I know, right?
Feels like we're starting to peek behind the curtain of the Spanish language and see how everything works.
And the best part is, this is just the beginning.
Oh my goodness, there's more.
There's so much more to discover about Spanish possessives.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm ready for more.
Bring on the aha moments.
So many aha moments. My brain is like exploding right now.
I know, right? Possessives. Who knew they could be so tricky?
So what other fascinating mysteries about Spanish possessives did you find in Jaime's video?
Well, remember how we were talking about that interesting thing with Spanish using definite articles for body parts?
Yeah, like I'm washing the hair.
Right, exactly. So it turns out that like a similar principle applies to clothing as well.
What do you mean?
Like when we're talking about articles of clothing that we're currently wearing,
Right.
Spanish will often use the definite article instead of a possessive adjective.
You mean instead of saying my shirt, I might have to say the shirt.
Yeah, exactly.
even if it's totally obvious that it's the shirt I'm wearing.
Right, because it's already clear from the context.
That seems even more counterintuitive than the body part rule.
I know, it can be a little confusing at first. But think about it this way. It's kind of like that subtle difference in emphasis that we were talking about earlier.
Okay.
Remember?
Yeah.
So Jaime gives this example. He says, Maria tiene una mancha en la camisa, which means Maria has a stain on the shirt. So notice how it's the shirt, not her shirt.
Right.
Because in that specific context, it's crystal clear which shirt we're talking about.
Right. The one she's wearing.
The one Maria is wearing. Exactly.
It's like Spanish is cutting out the unnecessary possessive and just getting straight to the point.
Exactly. It's all about efficiency.
Interesting.
And I think it also reflects that same idea of close association that we saw with the body parts.
Right.
Like the clothing becomes an extension of the person in that moment.
So again, it's not just a random grammar rule.
Right.
It's like this window into how Spanish speakers perceive the relationship between a person and their clothing.
It's a different perspective.
I love it.
I know. It's so fascinating.
Okay, so any other examples from Jaime's video that you thought were particularly interesting?
Well, speaking of cultural insights, there's this one example that I think is especially enlightening.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay, so Jaime gives us this sentence. Perdone, señor. Es esta maleta suya?
Which means...
Excuse me, sir. Is this suitcase yours?
Okay, yeah, what's so special about that sentence?
Well, at first glance, it seems like a pretty straightforward question, right?
Yeah.
But pay attention to the details.
Okay.
Notice how Jaime uses señor, which is the formal way to address a man in Spanish.
Right.
And then he also uses the possessive pronoun suya, which adds another layer of formality and respect to the question.
So it's not just about getting the grammar right.
Right.
It's also about choosing the words that convey the appropriate level of politeness for the situation.
Exactly. And in Spanish, those two things, grammar and politeness, they often go hand in hand.
You can't separate them.
You can't.
Wow. After going through all these examples with you, I feel like I have this whole new understanding of Spanish possessive adjectives.
Yeah.
It's so much more than just memorizing a bunch of rules.
Absolutely.
It's about appreciating all the little nuances and how they reflect the culture and the worldview.
I love that.
Yeah, it makes language learning so much richer.
It does.
And more meaningful.
For sure.
So for anyone listening who's even a tiny bit curious about Spanish, I cannot recommend Hibala's YouTube channel enough.
Oh, he's the best.
He's amazing. He breaks down even the most complex grammar concepts.
Yeah.
And makes them so fun and easy to understand.
And engaging.
Yeah. His learn by doing approach is seriously effective.
It really is.
It's the best.
Yeah.
And as you continue your own Spanish language journey, here's a final thought-provoking question for you to ponder. How do you think the way a language handles possessives reflects its culture's view of the individual and their belongings? It's something to think about as you delve deeper into the fascinating world of language and culture. Until next time, keep those language gears turning.